Like and subscribe for endless entertainment. Our story starts off in a world where demons attack humans mercilessly. But one man stood up against them to fight back against their cruelty and was crowned the world's strongest exorcist. He became too strong, so the politicians betrayed him and sent his favorite student to make him a hashtag. So he decided that in his next life, he will be more cunning and not stand out. In another world, the strongest man is reborn as the bastard of a noble, but his family finds out that he has no talent in magic, causing his brothers to laugh at him. The next day, Seika walks outside carrying a handful of leaves. He realizes that his powers from his old world still works and scatters his talismans into the forest. His older brother comes over and begins to act like a bully, so he makes the crow attack him and reveals that he's really just a little bitch as he cries in their oldest brother's arm. Seika begins creating many sheets of paper to make his origami, but a sudden knock comes at his door. Yifa came to give him his cloak that she found outside the window. As his older brother comes over to gloat that he will be going to the best magical school while Seika will remain here because he's a loser. Their father steps in and calls his older brother for magic training, but Seika asks if he can come along and his father agrees. On the training grounds, his oldest brother casts a powerful wind magic to destroy the rock, and his older brother shows off his fire magic to style on Seika. He decides that even though he didn't want to stand out in this life, sometimes you just have to flex on your haters, so he incinerates the rock and surprises everyone. Seika asks if he can learn magic, but his father refuses because he wasn't born with any magical affinity, so it would be a waste of time for him to learn it. He begins to study his new world while spying on his brother's training lessons, but his father watches him closely from the shadow. A few months later, Seika reveals that he sealed many shinigamis in his past life, so he decides to test if he can still call upon them and summons Yuki from her dimension. She tackles Seika to the floor and says that she missed him, but it would be troublesome if anyone saw her, so he goes to send her back, but she turns into a tiny fox and jumps on his head to hide. The next day, Yifa accidentally spills water on his older brother, so he invites her to his room to teach her how to clean him up, but Seika goes over to save her. His brother tries to fist him, but it gets easily blocked, then he storms off. She shows him that she found an injured animal and asks Seika to save it. So he makes her turn around, then uses his origami to heal it. Yifa begins telling him how amazing he is, but Seika reveals that he knows that she's special and asks her to show him what she can do. Yifa tells him that she can see the elementals that wanders the world, and in some cases she can even control them. So he summons a fire elemental and asks her to make it go away. Yifa kindly asks it to leave, but it remains, so she tells it to fork off and it goes to a better place. Seika begins training her to better control the elementals over the course of a year until his 12th birthday. While walking through the hall, his brothers confronts him and reveals that he will be sent to the army. So his oldest brother offers to teach him swordsmanship, but a maid suddenly rushes to them and reveals that a powerful monster is coming towards their mansion. They open the window and sees the salamander outside, and the older brother runs like a bitch while the oldest commands everyone to evacuate. The monster stands before Yifa and tries to take a munch, but she blocks it to the surprise of Seika. He goes towards the salamander and leads it out into the open where it tries to have lunch, but Seika decides to feed it some death as poison begins spreading throughout its body. Everyone begins deriding Seika for saving their lives and cheers for him while the older brother hides under a table. In the night, Seika was fed like the king he is. His father congratulates him on defeating the monster and tells him he will be awarded. Seika steps up and says that as a reward he will like to enroll in the most prestigious magic academy, so his father accepts. Seika also asks if Yifa can also accompany him to the school, but his father refuses because she has no magic. So he goes over and gives Yifa his wand. She begins to gather all the flame elementals she can and casts a giant flame spell, so his father agrees that she can go. His older brother begins to protest his decision because two brothers from their family can't go to the academy together. So his father reveals that he will be joining the army because he has a natural talent for swordsmanship. He challenges Seika to a duel with the winner going to the academy, and they agree that the fight will take place tomorrow. Later on, Seika sits in his room while crafting origami. His oldest brother comes to visit him and gives him a birthday present. He apologizes for how he treated Seika growing up and asks that he goes easy on their brother tomorrow. After he leaves, a powerful wind magic blasts through the window revealing his older brother. He decides that their fight will take place now and casts fire magic at his brother, but it does nothing. He sees that Seika has a barrier and begins spamming many spells at him. Seika uses his voodoo magic to place his brother under a genjutsu, then begins to make him scream like a bitch until his brother agrees to surrender. It's revealed that months ago Seika summoned another of his Shinigami into this world to take the salamander out of his nest and drive it toward the mansion so he can defeat it. Months later, Seika and Yifa gets ready to go off to the academy. He gives her a necklace to better help her control the elementals, then he begins to get motion sickness. They arrive at the academy and goes inside to take the exam. The instructor tells them to place their hand on the orb to see their magic affinity. Yifa goes first and it shows that she has a weak abilities in fire and wind. Then Seika goes next and it's revealed to everyone that he has no magic ability. Amu suddenly steps up to take the test and shows that she has high magic affinity in all magical elements. But Seika notices that she looks like his favorite student from the past. The instructor takes them to the practical exams where they're told to use their magic power to aim it at the stones. Yifa goes in front of the target and summons the fire elemental to blast a turn of flame, then goes over to another target and uses wind magic to blow holes into it. Seika praises her for flexing on the class. He goes up and uses an OP fire magic, then goes on to another target and uses the earth inside to break it apart. He heads over to a third target and uses origami as a medium to freeze the stone and heads back to Yifa, who congratulates him for doing well. Our duo visits the scoreboard and finds out that Seika came in third while Yifa pulled ahead of him at second, with the first place going to Amu. In the night, they receive an invitation to the entrance ceremony. They head to the academy, but Yifa sees some black force energy, so Seika goes over and sees an alchemy circle. He places origami around the area, then heads off to the ceremony. Amu goes up to give a speech, but while she's talking the circle activates and 3 demons suddenly burst through the door. The students try their best to fight back, but they're about to get smoked, but luckily Amu comes in to save everyone. Seika spies around the school and finds the mastermind behind the attack, then teleports over to him. He walks through the forest and comes face to face with his future victim. The monster summons 3 more demons to attack, but Seika slaughters 2 of them and seals the third for future use. The demon summons the Gate of Babylon to block Seika's attack, then throws a blade past him, then teleports it to Seika, but he dodges it. So the demon uses Getsuga Tensho to force Seika to jump and goes behind him to disarm or MC. Seika asks why he's here and the demon reveals that they're looking for the hero and they found her at the academy. The demon throws his noble phantasms at Seika and converges them in the air to finish him off. He praises Seika for a good fight, but he hears chanting and sees that our boy is still alive. The demon tries brain surgery, but Seika comes back. The demon creates more weapons and says that he will become the strongest after slaying the hero, but Seika explains to him that even if he became the strongest, the most cunning person will still come out on top. The demon launches his blades at Seika, so he drops a tsunami on top of him. The goat god teleports above, but Seika dodges and summons a Shinigami to give it the shock of his life. But the monster comes in and gives Seika a hard fisting, so he explodes all over him and puts the goat on his knees. The monster steps up and thinks that Seika is running out of origami, but he shows the goat god that he's broken as hell. Seika decides to end the fight and summons 4th Shinran to the battlefield. Ryu attacks the demon and carries him into the sky to turn the goat into dinner. Seika goes back to the ceremony where Yifa tells him that Amu defeated all the demons single-handedly, and he decides that in this world he will serve under the strongest person. So he must befriend Amu to be the cunning one this time. 1 month later, while walking to school, Seika sees Amu and calls to her, but she seems to hate him. They continue their walk where they're almost hit by a jar filled with mystery sauce. Seika goes over and sees the science teacher. He explains that he was doing an experiment, but while moving it to a floor above, he lost control. They head to class where the teacher asks the top 2 students to go and deliver something in the forest. Seika gets a bad feeling and tells Yifa to refuse so he can go with Amu instead. The teacher hands them the scroll and sends them into the forest. While walking, Amyu senses something, so they go over and sees an alchemy circle on the tree. It begins to glow and teleports them into a dungeon. Monsters appear and Amyu goes over to give the poor bastards all the smoke to take them out. But one more comes, and so Seika rocks its world. They begin exploring the dungeon, where Amyu reveals that no one will come for them. So Seika begins placing his origami on the ceiling so the ones above can sense them to find a way out. More monsters appear in the dungeon, but Amyu is always on demon time and disarms them. But she gets fisted, so Seika comes to protect her from the goblins as she passes out. Because she's asleep, he decides to summon a giant centipede to destroy the rest of the monsters. Then heals Amyu's wounds, but she still has a headache. Seika makes a barrier and reveals that she has been cursed. Amyu says that she never found any curse marks, but Seika says that it may be hidden. The Riz King gets her to take off her clothes so he can explore her body, but he finds nothing. He gives her an origami to absorb the curse. She asks him if he clapped Yifa's cheeks, but he denies it and says that she is his family. He reveals to her that because he is the son of a mistress, no one treated him with respect but Yifa. So Amyu tells him that as a child she was obsessed with battle and her goal is to become the strongest so her addiction can disappear. The smooth criminal tells her that she's fine the way she is, and Amyu thanks him for saving her. Before they begin going through the dungeon while massacring anything that enters their path until they find the boss room. They decide to challenge it to a fight and rushes inside. It spits fluids at Seika while Amyu goes behind to give it a blow job, allowing Seika to go up and makes it the throat goat. So Amyu goes over and begins burning it alive to make the rod explode in its throat and finishes it off by penetrating it with her sword. She goes over and embraces Seika because this was her first boss fight. Then they enter the reward room and sees a sword that he pulls out to give to Amyu. But he also finds a ring that he takes for himself. They escape the dungeon and heads back to school to tell the teacher what happened. Then Seika heads down to the science teacher's basement. He reveals that he's the one who cursed Amyu, so the teacher explains that he has been working for the demons this whole time as a spy, and says that his curse will give whoever it's placed on a one-way ticket to heaven. But Seika reveals that he transferred his curse to his origami because he knew that it was activated by being bathed in demon blood. Seika brings back the demon he sealed to give himself a bath. Then our little monster begins chanting to transfer the curse to himself, and goes into a trance so deep that his original body takes form to return the curse back to the sender. The demon smiles while the teacher begins feeling unimaginable pain and chokes on his blood as Seika leaves him to pass on. The next day, he has a meal with Yifa and gives her the ring he found to better control the elementals. He tries to call to Amyu, but she tells him off and goes over to Yifa to chill with her. 1 year later, it's revealed that no more incidents have happened and Seika now has talismans all over the school. The vice principal comes over to them and requests that both Seika and Yifa comes to his office. They enter the principal's office and finds out that a dwarf is the head of the school. She invites one of them to participate in a tournament along with the new student Mabel. Amyu begins freaking out because she wasn't invited, but Seika reveals that he will be the one to go because it seems interesting, and the winner gets money along with a position in the royal guards. They walk through the yard where Amyu begins complaining that Mabel gets to go instead of her, but Mabel confronts her and says that Amyu runs her mouth too much and says she wasn't chosen because she's weak. Amyu gets 2 swords and challenges her to a duel, so Mabel takes it up and gets ready to fight. Amyu runs forward, but Mabel deflects it and thrusts her blade into Amyu to disarm her. Mabel begins walking away, but Amyu points out that she used dark magic in their fight, but Mabel tells them that they get one chance to win and reveals to Seika that the tournament will be much worse. Later on, a carriage comes to bring them to the tournament with Yifa and Amyu joining along with them. They arrive at the capital where Seika is suffering from a case of motion sickness, but they realize that Mabel has gone missing. Seika goes to look at who he will be fighting, then sends off his harem so he can place his origami throughout the city in peace. The day of the tournament arrives. Seika goes in for his first match against a soon-to-be victim. The fight begins with the swordsman going forward to penetrate Seika, but he goes behind him to blow him off the stage and claims his first victory. The next round begins with a water mage against Kyle. The battle starts off with Kyle paralyzing his opponent with fear, then walks over to send the mage on a one-way ticket to heaven, and claims his first victory. The crowd begins cheering from the first fatality, but Seika realizes that Kyle has the ability to curse people with his evil eye. Seika goes in for his second fight and is up against a golem being controlled by a mage. The battle starts off with the golem walking forward, but Seika summons a Shinigami to destroy the golem and claims his second victory. He goes back to his seat where Mabel's match starts against an earth mage. The battle starts with the mage spamming rocks, but all of them gets easily cut down. He summons a great wall, but she destroys it as well. Seika reveals that she's using gravity magic on her weapons to increase its damage. As Mabel closes the distance to disarm the mage and claims victory for her second match, it's revealed that Mabel is the name of the second hero and also wields the hero's weapon. In the night, a man gives a message to a pigeon that is immediately smoked by a hawk. Seika comes and accuses the man of being a demon spy. The man walks past him and prepares to give him extra holes, but Seika easily captures the spy. He asks what he was reporting, but the man refuses to snitch. So Seika summons a scary-looking mofo. The monkey begins saying what the man is thinking, and it reveals the boss of the man along with where the devils are located. Seika asks who he's spying on, and it says that Mabel is the true hero because her age and skills match the prophecy. After getting all he wants, Seika releases the man from his restraints and allows the monkey to go over and tear him to shreds until the only thing that's left is a stain. It begins reading Seika's mind, but he threatens the creature and sends it back into its room. Seika reveals that the skull sent Mabel as the false hero to win the tournament and take attention away from Amu, who is the real hero. The next day, a mage that can wield all 4 elements goes up against Kyle. The fight starts off with the avatar casting light magic to protect himself from the evil eye, but Kyle just walks forward. He begins spamming magic at Kyle, but nothing slows him down, so the avatar creates golems to attack him. Kyle uses dark magic to defeat them, so the avatar closes the distance and is trapped by shadow possession jutsu. Kyle raises his sword but is stopped by the judges and is declared the winner. In the night, Seika tries to get some sleep, but Yuki says that she wants to join him. He realizes that Mabel is on top of the roof and dodges her attack aimed at him. She tackles Seika through the window and they land on the street. Mabel penetrates him, but he substitutes and blows her off. A man comes in to distract him and gives her the chance to escape. He follows her to a fountain and sits down to speak with her. She tells him that she just wanted to injure him so he couldn't fight her tomorrow. Seika reveals that he knows that she is just a stand-in for Amu to distract the demon. But Mabel explains that her job is not to win the tournament but to be slain by Kyle, so the demons think that the hero is gone. She goes on to explain that both her and Kyle are from an assassin guild, but they did brain surgery on Kyle to turn him into a worker without pay. But before his operation they were all trained together like they were family, and was told that to get to the next stage one of them must smoke the other 3, and Mabel is the last one left for Kyle to slay. Seiko realizes that Kyle is also her brother, so Mabel admits that her brother's final request was to be free from the guild's mind control, so she will go against her orders and send him off to Jesus. Seika tells her that he will defeat both her and Kyle, so neither of them have to pass on. The next day, Mabel and Seika enter the match against each other. The fight starts off with Mabel attacking Seika, but he blocks and is forced to use substitution. She throws knives at him, but he takes the chance to restrain her with vines, but she escapes, so he makes her weapons too heavy to lift and traps her in vines formed from metal. Seika goes over to her and puts the axe at Mabel's breather. Then the judges declares that Seika won the fight. The last fight begins between Seika and Kyle. Seika starts off by creating a fog to surround them and tries to restrain him in metal, but he breaks out, then uses shadows to attack Seika. He decides to summon a minotaur that goes on to one-shot Kyle. Seika goes over to him, but a curse appears on his body. Kyle conjures a barrier to block out the curse, but for some reason Kyle still seems to be passing on. He tells Seika his final words to Mabel, then goes to heaven. But Seika decides that he will use his full power to return Kyle from the underworld and begins his chant, but Yuki comes forth to remind him that he promised not to stand out in this world or he'll end up being used again. After the tournament, Seika took Kyle's body and refuses to become a royal guard after he's declared the winner. He carries Mabel to a hill where they bury Kyle. Seika reveals her brother's last words to her and she begins to grieve for her loss, but Mabel reveals that she has nowhere to go. So Seika invites her to join the academy.